Okay, so the anchor of the week is Satan is real and active in the world, and this is what we went through in a nutshell yesterday. We talked about Satan being real. We talked about some verses that talk about that. And then we talked about we bear the image of God, but He is God and we are not. And then we talked about the origination of Satan, that he was an angel. He was created being an angel who revolted against God and took some demons with him, some angels with him. And we talked about some of his names, and we talked about how the Hebrew word for Satan actually means adversary. So he is our adversary. And I think this is about where. Yeah, and so we stopped here that he is subtle and he is deceptive. And so we're going to talk about 2 Corinthians 4 here. This shows the subtlety, and I'll explain this after I read it a little bit. It might be a little explain. And even if our gospel is veiled, it is veiled to those who are perishing. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers to keep them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. So he's referring here to, and you probably remember this, that when Moses would go up on the mountain and meet with God, when he came down, his face would be glowing because of his meeting with God. And it was apparently so glowy that, I don't think that's a word, that people couldn't handle it. I don't know if you've ever been in a dark room and you flip on the lights and they're really bright, and you kind of do this. And that's what they were doing all the time. And they're like, turn it off. We can't handle it. And so he put this veil over his face. And then over time, it would settle down, and so he'd be able to take the veil off. Then he'd go back up on the mountain again, and he'd have to come down and have the veil on. So that's what he's talking about. And then he says that that the people of this world are veiled. The people who don't know Christ, they have a veil over their face so that they can't see the truth. And then he says, but we with unveiled faces are able to see God. So how does this, what does this have to do with Satan? Even if our gospel is veiled, even if we don't understand it fully, it is veiled to those who are perishing. So it is truly veiled to those who do not know Jesus. In their case, the God of this world has blinded the minds of the unbelievers. Who's the God of this world? Lowercase g. He's talking about Satan. So Satan has blinded the eyes of unbelievers so that they can't see. And they don't see the truth. He keeps them from seeing the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. For what we proclaim is what we know, because we with unveiled faces can see the truth. So he is subtle. He doesn't walk in and say, "Hey, I'm Satan, worship me," because if he did that, people would say, "Pretty sure you're bad, so I don't think I'm going to." So he has to come in the back door or the side door to get there, and he'll make something look really good that isn't really good to get us there. And then we see this in Matthew 7:15. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. So this is where that whole saying, by the way, there are a whole lot of sayings in the Bible that have become sayings in our vernacular. And this is one of them, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Have you heard this before? So a wolf in sheep's clothing is someone who looks like they're really nice and they're your friend and they're not going to hurt you. But in reality, they're a wolf. In reality, they're going to do all those things. They're going to hurt you, and
People usually say that about politicians.
Yeah, a wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm your best friend. So these false prophets are coming from Satan, right? And they look really nice and they look really good, and it looks like it's all okay. But what they're peddling is death, not life. And so he is subtle, but he is deceptive. So let's talk a little bit about Satan. We already talked about this. Okay, no, this is where we are. So how does the lie spread? So let's talk again about the lie. And in John 8:44, it says that Satan is the father of lies. So he is a liar. So that lie we talked about yesterday is this. Yeah, we've been talking. He's the father of lies, and so that lie that we talked about yesterday is you can be God, you can be like God. It was the lie that he gave to in the garden to Eve, and it's the lie that he believed himself. He wanted to set himself up as God, and he will tell that to people in a multiplicity of false religions. Uh, That is basically what Buddhism says. You can reach nirvana. You can be God. That's basically what Hinduism says. And I told you about, reminded you about Terry Cole Whitaker, who talks about that we are divine. We are our own divinity. We are God, or each gods. And it's a lie that's very attractive to people who don't realize it's a lie. Mormonism, and most people don't know this, but Mormons believe that if you are a Mormon male, and you're a Mormon male, a faithful Mormon male, when you die, you become the god of a planet somewhere. Um, and so, do you have your every day, every day you bring it. Um, so Mormon men, when they die, they become a god of a planet, and their wife on Earth is one of their many spirit wives. They've got a bunch of them. They've got a harem when you die, which is why, and people don't generally know this, that if you are a Mormon woman and you are married to a man who is not a Mormon or who is not a Mormon in good standing, you will be counseled to divorce him because you have no chance of becoming a spirit wife if your husband doesn't. Your husband determines your afterlife, and so that's a lie from the garden. You can be. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you just die or you go through. I don't know what. I do know that Mormons believe that Satan and Jesus are half brothers, literal half brothers. Jesus is the son, the literal son of the God of this earth. It's that God is not. Thank you. That God is not um, the God of everything. Is the God of this earth, and Jesus is the literal son of God and one of his wives, and and Satan is the son of that same God, and another one. Freaked out yet? Maybe you would have chosen the cult lesson instead of the Satan lesson. Yeah, because it talks a lot about Mormonism. So anyway, that's the lie that spreads, and it's attractive to people. Um, yeah, I'm gonna just scroll through this. There we go. So he is the father of lies. John 8:44 says, Satan is not content to keep the lie to himself. He wants to pass on the belief that we can become like God. And the concept of being God or being like God is part of the theology of every cult or false religion and many cultures as well, cultural beliefs as well. So then the next thing is, how can we escape him? These are going to come up every time. So how can we escape him? So Satan is a formidable adversary, and he's an adversary who is subtle and strong, and he often appears as an angel of light. But here's the deal: up against Jesus, he's nothing. He's child's play. He can't defeat Jesus. So we need to not overestimate him, but not underestimate him. If we say, "Oh, Satan, no big deal. I can, I'm a Christian. I can beat him." No, you can't. But he who lives in you. Or oh, Satan's everywhere, and what am I going to do? And no, we don't need to be afraid of him. He's already lost. Okay, so guys, if you went into a basketball game, okay, and you walked in and the score said 100-20, okay, that's the score. Do you have to worry about the game? No, you've already won the game, right? And that's, oh, sorry. Ben's here. So he's already won. He's already won the war. So we have to stay away from those two extremes. So 1 Corinthians 10:12-13 says, "Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed, lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. But God is faithful, and He will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, He will also provide a way of escape that you may be able to endure it." So, how do we escape Him? We confess. We take the way out. We are tempted, right? We've all been tempted. But God is faithful to give us a way out of that temptation. If we give into that temptation, that's on us. But God provides the escape. And we need to take it. We need to look for the escape when we're being tempted. And then in Mark 10, it says this, and I'll give you the background after I read it. And they were exceedingly astonished and said to him, "Then who can be saved?" Jesus looked at them and said, "With man it is impossible, but not with God, for all things are possible with God." So Jesus has just said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. And so then they're like, "Well, then how can anybody be saved?" And he says, everything's possible. We don't have to fear Satan because God's got this. And everything, nothing is impossible for him. And so God desires for you or from you that you will look to him and that he will enable you to live for him. And then in 1 John 4:4, I'm going to read 2-4, it says this. "But by this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. And every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and now is in the world already. Little children, you are from God and have overcome them. For he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world." Listen, he who is in the world is greater than you. He who is in the world is greater than me. But he who is in me is greater than he who is in me. That's Jesus. And if you are a follower of Christ, Christ lives in you, and he is greater than Satan. You don't have to fear him. He can't get to you unless you let him. And so the greater is he who is in me and he who is in you than he who is than Satan. let's go back here. Okay. So then what are Satan's, who are Satan's helpers? I missed that. I'm sorry. I missed that. I want to say one more thing about how to escape. When we focus on Jesus, Satan loses his power. So if we live with our eyes fixed on Jesus, which is what Hebrews 12 says, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him scorned the cross, the joy set before him, scorning its shame, endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of God. When we fix our eyes on Jesus, he can't touch us. He has no power over us. But we must guard against two extremes in regard to Satan. We must be careful not to see him as being behind everything. Well, that's Satan, and this is Satan, and something else was Satan. And some of it is just our disobedience. Some of it is brought on by us. I don't know if you've ever seen the SNL Church Ladies skits. It's from like the 90s. And two of the guys, Dana Carvey and someone else, would dress up as these church ladies, and they saw Satan behind everything. And so, something would happen, like their cookies would be burned, and, well, who did that? Maybe Satan? And Satan was the cause of everything. That's one extreme, and sometimes it isn't Satan. Sometimes we're just stupid and we do stupid things, right? It isn't always Satan. But the other side of that is like not taking Satan seriously at all, like putting a pitchfork in his hand, and he's got these red pointy ears, and he's got this tail, and we make Satan out to be something that he's not, and so we shouldn't see him in everything, but we also need to understand that he is our adversary, and we need to take that seriously, and we can't use him as an excuse for what we do. We do what we choose to do. Satan didn't do that. I did that, not Satan. So the devil made me do it is not really a thing. So then, who are Satan's helpers? That's a little bit, well, it doesn't say who, it says what. So how does it mean what are Satan's helpers? We tend to slide into things that give Satan a foot in the door. We crack open that door and it gives him a foot in the door. Things like lying, anger, stealing, pride, slander, guilt, unbelief, discouragement, hopelessness, worry, anxiety. And when we get in that mode, we're not trusting God. I used to tell people, I'm speaking in chapel next week, and I'm trying to figure out what to talk about, and I've been looking back at some old talks, and one was on worry and anxiety. And what I said to the group was, I am genetically predisposed to worry. My grandmother was one of the world's greatest warriors. My mother called it her little black cloud that followed my grandmother. But my mother was the one who used to ask me to call her in winter when I got home safe. And I lived 3 houses. So I have this genetic thing about worry, and what I've learned about worry is it isn't productive. And I can't tell you the number of times that Jeff has said to me, Amy, don't worry, just pray. That's productive. So when we lie, or when we become angry, or we steal, or we have pride or slander, guilt, unbelief, discouragement, hopelessness, worry, and anxiety, we are not relying on God. We're not relying on the fruit of the Spirit, but we are giving Satan a chance to kick that door down. And then the other helper would be anything having to do with the occult. Look, stay away from anything having to do with the occult. Seances, mediums, Ouija boards, occultic paraphernalia. If you don't think that that's against God's plan, I invite you to go to either Deuteronomy 18 or Leviticus 18 and 19. And it's very clear there that we are to stay as far away as possible from anything having to do with the occult. So now let's talk about what are Satan's ploys. Satan sets out to, by whatever means necessary, to turn people away from God and toward their eventual destruction. They don't have to turn from Him. They just have to turn away from God. Whatever the other thing is, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be Satan worship. It could be any of other false religion. It's it's no matter to Him because it all leads. And so He wants us to stop following God and turn the other direction. By the way, that is the definition of repent. The definition of repent is I'm going after this thing that is not of God, and I turn and I make a 90-degree turn back toward God. By the way, I heard somebody once say that repentance is a 180-degree turn to God. And I was like, no, that doesn't work that way. And I know that. No, 180, it's 180. I messed it up. Oh, my word. What did I say? Did I say 90 degrees? I said 90 degrees? Oh, my word. Okay, let's start over. Can we start over? It's 180. Now I'm the bad one at math, and I'm teasing people who are bad at math. Oh, my gosh. Okay, so it's a 180-degree turn back to God. But this person said that repentance is a 360-degree turn. And so I said that, okay, well, sometimes we do that, though, right? We turn back to God, and then we go, but I kind of like that. I'll go back, right? And we tend to have to deal with that over and over again. I'm doing this. I'm putting that on YouTube. Those Spanish kids can figure it out for themselves. No, I've got all kinds of stuff that are embarrassing. So yeah, he sets out by whatever means necessary to turn us away from God. He mixes his lies, and I think I have some stuff up here about this. Yeah, he mixes lies with the truth. He'll take a kernel of truth and he'll put a lie in there, and then it becomes an all lie because it's not true. He'll lie to you about who you are or what your situation is, and sometimes he'll make you think that it's you thinking and that it's true. And Satan will always attack the person. God attacks sin, doesn't attack him. Listen, there are times, and especially times early in our marriage, when my anger gave Satan a foot. And I would get angry, particularly at Jeff, for something not important. And it would put a wedge. I remember the night, I think it was early in 1991. I think last time I said late 1991. I think it was like January of 1991. And Jeff was late getting home, and I'd been home with this little baby already. And he didn't tell me he was going to be late. And he walked in, and I just lit into him. And I was angry, and I started doing you never statements and you always things. When you get to that, when you're in a fight, and you're using you never or you always, that's not true. It's never always, right? But we say that, and we say those options, and we begin to believe. And we're helping Satan. So I lit into Jeff, and he said to me, Amy, have you been watching the news? And I said, no. He said, we're at war. The first ever Desert Storm started that night. And I just, a mess, obviously, a crying mess, and apologized to him. And it was instructive to me to not allow Satan to use that to put a wedge between my husband. Not that I never get angry anymore, but I do stay away from boys and never statements as best as I can. So he will attack the person. God attacks the sin, and he will mix those lies with truth, and it often at the detriment of our relationships. So then the next one is how do we fight Satan? How do we fight Satan? And so we're going to look at a few verses here. I think we'll end end with this, and then we'll just finish up the last. The first thing is that we need to recognize our enemy. We need to know who the true enemy is. Look, your friend that you're angry at is not your enemy. Your parents are not your enemy. Your worst enemy that you think is an enemy is not your enemy. You have an enemy of your souls. And he wants to use those other enemies and your feelings toward them to take you down. You have an enemy, and we need to recognize who our true enemy is in all of these situations. Here's 1 Peter 5. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, which is funny because it's your adversary, if it were in Hebrew, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. So what he's saying is, look, you need to recognize when it's Satan, and you need to know that he is your enemy, so that you and resist him, so that you don't fall for his tricks. And then we need to know that he is a roaring lion seeking to devour us, and so we have to resist him to stay firm in our faith. And then in Ephesians 6:12 and 13 it says this: finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, Satan and his minions, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Here's the thing. We're in a battle. And if we don't realize we're in a battle, then we're sunk, right? We've got to realize there's a battle going on. And we need to fight that battle, and we need to stay close to Christ in order to do that. And we need to be aware that who is leading the charge on the other side is our enemy. And then John 8:44. You are of your father. Jesus is having a conversation with the Jewish leaders, and he's about to call them the spawn of Satan, and they get a little bit angry about that. You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks out of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of lies. So we need to recognize that Satan is a liar, absolutely a liar. And then 2 Corinthians 11:14 says, for such men are false. So these are people who are false teachers. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workmen, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. So it is no surprise if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds. In other words, they will be destroyed. So he is an angel of light, or appears to be. I'm going to stop there for today, and we'll pick up here tomorrow and finish this section out. We have a video we'll be watching. I don't know if we're going to start that tomorrow or not. So that's it for today.